Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm very keen on getting you all a little bit introduced in what I feel is the real urgency, why we really need to talk about circularity today, why we all need you to talk about circularity today. I'll very shortly introduce myself. I'm Jacco Verstraat. I work with a big team, not just me, on the Circularity Gap Report, which is a series of reports that try to really measure how circular our world is. That started 3 years ago, where we started to look at the whole globe, the whole world. Obviously, it's a closed system. We can't get off this planet. Our materials, our products, our economy can't get off this planet. So how circular are we within that closed system? That was the first question. And well, it wasn't an easy question, I'll admit. The data is scarce and everything. But when we looked at it, we came to this number, 9%. It might be 8%, it might be 10%. We're still, the methodology is still developing, but it does mean that 90% or around 90% of all our materials, all our, the value in those materials, in these products, the impact that we need to get that 90% of materials still out of our environment, that is still wasted. And that's the real urgency we hear. So it's related to climate change, because these materials, to produce these new materials, we're looking at energy use, but it's also related to plastic waste, to unsafe environments in cities. So I'll try to guide you through some of these challenges, but first, really, why do we need to change the challenge? A little bit of theory. I just have 10 minutes, so it won't be a lot of theory, obviously. But also benefits. So the word economy is in here. It's circular economy. So there's benefits. There's reasons why we really want this. There's still a gap to fill, the 90%, and how to do that, the solution. So first, the challenge. Why? What is the issue? And I think some of you will be familiar with these kind of graphs. Since the Industrial Revolution, or actually it's more like since the beginning of the last century, we've seen many lines of our economy go up and go up exponentially, whether it's resource extraction, such as in this figure, whether it's GDP, whether it's CO2 emissions, whether it's water extraction, whether it's welfare, they're all on an exponential growth path. But the problem is, we'll hit a ceiling at some point. Obviously, GDP, well, we could have a debate of that, but there's not a problem. The problem is our connection to the nature, where we all get our resources, connection to our finite resources that will run out at some point. And this is where we introduced a few years back the word, the gap. And it's not the first time that we introduced that word. It's actually also used in the climate debate. The gap is where we need to solve the issue of looking for economic growth, or at least increased welfare, better social standing, but at the same time minimizing our resource extraction, our impact on nature. And this is why we need that. I mean, this could be a picture of our future. We could have beautiful cities, beautiful buildings, but very unhealthy environments. And mind you, this is a picture from before COVID. So this guy is not wearing his mask because of COVID, but really because it's just a very unhealthy environment. So here we would have an economy runoff in these kind of situations. But we don't have to look that far into the future or far into the east. It's also happening around the corner. I think most of you will be very familiar with the fact that in Groningen, a lot of houses look like this these days. And that's because we've mined all the materials, all the gas in this case, below the surface, without really thinking about balancing that system, without thinking of the consequences properly enough. So this circular economy is really about balancing that. How can we interact with the ecosystems, but also with our lithosphere, where we're getting our oil and gas from, in a way that we're not upsetting any balances. And this is where the circular economy comes in. This is where we hope, think, have some proof that there is a solution to this. This could be a very simple picture of our current economy. We go from sourcing our materials, to refining them, to producing the goods, selling the goods, using them, and then they go to incineration and landfill. This is what we invented during the Industrial Revolution. Before that, we were in a circular economy. We were in balance with the ecosystems around us. This is what we invented during the Industrial Revolution, and it brought us a lot of good. But now we feel we need to move to this kind of system where we look more into looping all the materials, all the goods, all the value and impact that is associated with our products. And in an ideal future, we could cut out the source part here almost completely. We just would keep all the materials in use as long as we can. And we can try and pretend that this is a very new concept, but obviously nature beat us to it. They invented it actually. And also, if you look at the academic world, this has been part of the academic debate since the 1970s and a little bit before that even. So it's not a new concept, although we're using this word circular economy only for a small decade now. But it's been, this kind of thinking has been along for quite a while now. But I always stress to, especially people in the in-crowd, that circular economy is not a goal in itself. It's really a means to an end. So we're trying to achieve a better good with this. And the very obvious one, the most important one, most urgent one at this point in time, I would say, is climate impact. We really need to see how we can get the world back into a 2 degree or even the 1.5 degree scenarios, and we're far from that. And the circular economy has a very big role to play there. Obviously, there's already quite some national commitments. Some countries are achieving those commitments better than others, but there's commitments from national government, but they're not taking us where we need. Circular economy can bring us a lot further, as you can show in this, as seen in this picture. And then there are still other measures. So I'm not saying that circular economy is the solution, but it is a very serious contribution to that solution. Another thing is employment. There is the word economy in circular economy. So we're trying to also get people into these new kinds of jobs. In that case, it's very similar to the digital revolution. We're talking about a new kind of economy. And there's a lot of debate on how to calculate that. And there's for sure also going to be job loss. But this kind of, I like this example that's here from showing that incineration just needs one job versus the reuse of the same kind of, in this case, textiles products will actually need up to 300 jobs to keep that running. So we're talking about job creation as well. And now the gap, how big is the problem? I already showed you the 90%. But we're in the Netherlands. We're talking about the Netherlands here today for a large part. And on the country level, it's even a little bit more complicated. The globe is a nice closed system. If you look at the country, you also have imports and exports and a lot of stock building up. So I won't go with the details, but we've done quite an extensive data analysis also for the Netherlands. And we constantly are painting pictures like this and show how the materials being extracted and imported go through a national economy to serve societal needs, go into stock, but in the end are mostly lost as well. And the good news is the Netherlands is doing better than the global average. The global average, 9%, the Netherlands is 24% circular. But that means that still 75% of our materials are lost. It's still a huge loss of value, of impact. And it also means that still 75% of the materials that we use need to come from nature or need to come from the lithosphere. So there's still a lot to gain. And this is also recognized by the national government that sets the target to 50% in 2030 and 100% in 2050. So there is already a lot to be done in the coming 10 years to double this number. And now the solution, how are we going to do that? I'm going to show you two insights into that. And first, this model, there's many models out there that describe how you can become circular as a company or as a consumer. This is just yet another one, but it's one that we developed and I really like because it really shows different ways of thinking about it. It's not just about thinking how can we go to renewable resources or preserve what's already there or use waste as a resource. It's also about the business model. So rethink the business model, rethink the design of your products. Look at the opportunities that digital technology gives you. And don't forget to look around. Circular economy is definitely about collaborating and creating joint value. And this is, I think, why I'm very enthusiastic about events like this, because we really need to get people to the table. And you might have heard already in introduction, I'm also in charge of the business solutions that my organization gives to companies. So you won't be surprised that I sometimes sit at a board table and they're still not convinced. A CFO is still looking at the bottom line. What does it bring to the company? So we also nowadays present this figure, where we're talking about the value that circular economy can bring to a company. And this is also still in development. It's still a relatively new field, as you can imagine. But what we try to explain is that circular economy, also for business, can be profitable if you are willing to look beyond direct savings in cost or direct increases in revenues. It's also about customer relationships, being close to your customer, having that bond and that loyalty from your customer. It's about aligning with public expectations. It's about risk reduction, and especially that one is gaining a lot of traction at the moment with the scare that a lot of CEOs and CFOs have gotten through COVID. It's about innovating, and you will be surprised also how often I'm talking to HR departments or to HR directors that say, well, I really need this as well for my business because I see I'm losing the war on talent because people don't want to work at my company. They think we're a dying out dinosaur that's not innovating and that doesn't have a future because we need to move to a circular future, and we're not doing that as a company. So there's a lot of value that the circular economy can bring to a company if you're willing to look to other departments, to other parts of your business, rather than just your sales. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope I've kept within the time, and I hope I drove a little bit of urgency and also a feel of opportunity to your group. And I'm very much looking forward to engaging with you in the breakout sessions and in networking later today. I think that's back to you then, Jan-Willem.
Thank you. Stay on, Jacco. Thanks very much for that really interesting presentation and the insight. I like the last slides. I don't know if you can put it up again.
Oh, yes, sure. Sorry.
The previous. And I would like to invite for a few questions if there are any in the chat. I don't see any, but I do have a question myself. So you were saying that the Netherlands is doing okay, 9%, 24%. And we need to go on our...
Well, it depends on the definition of okay, of course. 24% is still far from 100.
Exactly. So my question is, because circular economy has been around for such a long time, as you said, just in different ways of talking about it, are we at the still at the bottom end of the hockey curve going up, or are you seeing an acceleration?
I wish I had a positive answer to that one, but obviously we've only been measuring this for a couple of years now, and I know of a few academic efforts out there that's trying to make a time series out of it. But what I can tell you is that for the global metric, the 9%, we've now calculated it 2 or 3 times. And the truth of the matter is we see it going, it's lowering. It's going from, it was about 9.1, 9.2 a few years back, and now our best estimate, and there's a huge uncertainty margin, you can imagine, but our best estimate is actually that's 8.6 nowadays. So it's actually going in the reverse direction, it seems.
So if you have I mean, I think the important thing is you measure it, and congratulations for having started that globally. You did it in Austria, you did it now here. You put a stake in the ground. You said this is the target. This is the target that everybody, or at least the figure that everybody can fight about. But at least there it is, 9%. And as I say, you can't manage what you don't measure. So you've measured it. We can argue about the metrics, but it's there. So if there's a silver bullet for you to actually use to start the acceleration, and you look at your 7 models, your 7 strategies, where do you think is the most promising intervention?
That's a hard question.
Your favorite one.
My favorite one.
The one you spend time on. I can't solve this one, but I know it's important.
Well, I've got two answers to that. I'll start with the first one. I think what it all boils down to, I think you can look into whether you go for renewables or whether you're going for reusing the waste or just going digital. But all of these measures, in the end, also boil down to rethinking your business model. I think there's no, for a company at least, there's no way around that. Every aspect of every step that's going beyond just trying to get a little bit of efficiency gain, immediately you need to rethink your business model. So that one, I would say, is always key. And it's connected to the other. There's a reason why it's in the center of this diagram. And at the same time, if I look at the work that we do on the national and global level, we do try and estimate the impact of individual measures and individual interventions. And then if you look at one intervention, it's usually quite disappointing to see how much impact that has on the metric. It's sometimes just 1 or 2%, and then you're talking about very ambitious measures. But the interesting thing is when you do not one intervention, but you take a couple of them, 5, 6 very ambitious interventions over different sectors, you'll see a multiplication effect. They strengthen each other. It's not 1 + 1, but it's an order of magnitude more of an impact. So suddenly you don't have 1%, 1%, and 1%, but it's really 10, 15% of an improvement. So that shows you that it's a really delicate system, our economy, and just looking at it from one direction isn't going to solve it. You need to pinpoint various levers in that system and act on all of them simultaneously.
Yeah. No, I think everybody will have a particular lever that they're, where their skill and their competences are. But I think all of us are always thinking about how to rethink our business model. So I think that is something which I think we can challenge everyone of, because every company is continuously looking at, okay, how am I going to rethink my business model to stay competitive, no matter what business you're in. So thank you so much for this presentation. We'll see you in the breakout.